2. Hey guys, what is up? Kid here, Burn One with the Shadowverse Evolved channel, bringing you another set review. Joined as always with two of the regular guests on here. We have Pressure. Want to say hi? And got our Force main over here, Shepard.
I do other things than play Forest.
Listen, you're the Force main for life now.
Kind of an insult, TBH.
Look, I'm just saying, when you guys need the meta gauntlet, who has every deck made on untap? It's not Scaz, it's not Pressure, it's the boy, okay?
True. All right, so yeah, this is the sword review. Really quick, we're gonna hit up the rating. If the rating key here, if you guys were not part of the first episode, this is how we're rating all the cards moving forward. If you're joining in here, this is the first time you're seeing our set review for this set, and you've seen the other ones. We've completely changed everything around, a little bit more structured here. And with that being said, we'll just jump into the first card here. First thing here is Octress, Omen of Why can't I say this word? Usurpation? How do you say that? Usurpation. Oh, okay. Usurpation. Okay. Evolve for 2. All right, pay 2 to evolve, and then it has evolve 0. Evolve this follower can only evolve this way if your opponent has 10 or more cards in their cemetery. Fanfare, put the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck into their cemetery. Then it has an activated effect that costs 8 play points. Select a card in your opponent's cemetery and play it for 0. And then evolved, it has the same thing here. A new thing, actually. While this card is on your field, whenever you play a card from the EX area, you may play it for 2 less if your opponent has 10 or more cards in their cemetery. On evolve, select a card in your opponent's cemetery and put it into your EX area. And then the same activated ability, pay 8 play points to basically play a card from your opponent's cemetery for free. This card is insane. Yeah. This is like one of the new archetypes here is Thief, or whatever they're going to end up translating it as. Basically what Shepard's putting there. This card is obnoxiously powerful. It's a really good 2-drop. It's a really good late game. Getting every Thief card moving forward is going to have your opponent like mill cards, and your opponent's going to lose cards anyway automatically from playing the game. So a lot of this stuff will be online relatively quick. What else is there to say? Like, imagine taking your opponent's Aegis is a pretty funny thing too. But yeah, go ahead.
Let's just hit him with the old quadrant theory. This card is good early. This card is good late. This card is good when you're winning. This card is good when you're losing. The only time this card might feel slightly worse is if you don't have any more evolves left. Just kidding. You could still play the 8 play points in the late game. This card's busted. This card's nuts. This card actually makes me want to play Sword. I think this is better than every Forest card they printed this set. I don't even know what else to say. Yeah, this is just insane.
Okay, I do kind of want to break down some of that, because I think that, number one, I think the 8 play points is kind of a bait. I don't think that ever comes up ever, because when you really think about it, you have to play this out for 2, then you have to play the 8 play points. Unless it survives, then something's going on. You're probably winning anyway if this survives. But the 8 play points only really matters if you're playing something that's like higher than 8 play points from your opponent's cemetery, and there's not a lot of relevant cards in the game right now that do that. D-Shift is one that's not really relevant right now, but that's a funny one. Even just like playing Aegis isn't like that amazing. If you have 3 cards in the hand, you ditch. That's kind of sick. But I think the 8 play points is sort of a bait. I don't think that will ever come up. Ever.
I just say that up as like the scenario where you're out of all your evos and you're in the super late game, and it's like you don't have to go up on play points. Like whenever you play a card with this card, you don't have to go up on play points. You just have to play the best possible card for that moment, right? You could, like, let's say your opponent has like a giant board of all 10/10s. You can Themis.
If they're playing a deck with them,
I'm just saying, if your opponent has like, if it's like the late game, if it's super late, your opponent's got like 15, 20 cards in their deck or in their library. You just have to pick the best one. I'm not saying that's like ever going to come up. I'm just saying this card's good in so many situations.
Yeah,
it's even got edge cases where it's good. The corner, but outside of the corner cases, it's just always good. Like there's no point in the game where this is not a card you really like want to draw in this.
Yeah,
deck.
I think early on it's pretty bad. I think 2 mana 2/2 is pretty bad.
Yeah, that's okay. I guess it depends on how you define the early game, because like if you in the first, I would say like the first 5 turns is fine to see this. You don't necessarily want to slam it on 2.
Yeah, and just to kind of talk about the 8 play point activation thing, like even when we evaluate this card, I don't think any of us are really, giving a lot of weight to the 8 play point activate thing. Like, yes, it's a very good effect that you'll probably maybe use it once in like 10 games possibly, but it's like the cherry on top that pushes this card like a little bit over the edge for me. Like the card, even without that 8 play point activation thing, the card was already like a really fucking good card, right? So
yeah, the card's an S tier, and then they kept giving it text. Like they added more text after they made an S tier card.
Yeah. All right, Pressure, anything else you want to add, Pressure? Or
I was just thinking about it because because I don't want to underrate the card, but I do think it's not as crazy as you guys are talking about, because I think that it's a just getting value in this game is sometimes not good enough, and we are getting to that point. Like, it is basically a 2-mana 4/4, draw a card, play it for 2 less. That's basically what it is.
It's so much better than that, dude. Because you pick the card, and if they have 10 cards in their cemetery, you pick the best of those 10.
Yeah, but I'm saying that those 10 might fucking suck, you know? Like, especially for situations. Like, there's a lot of situations where the 10 cards in their cemetery are awful. Like, depending on the deck. Like, that's sort of what I'm trying to say, is that I think it's if you just look at it as like a you get to pick a card, it's number one, people are playing really good cards anyway, but also the matchups, there's a lot of matchups where there's just not a good card, and you're really just getting, okay, here's a body for like 2 less. That's what it ends up coming down to.
Yeah, I kind of understand your point of view, but at the end of the day, like, you could high roll into like randomly Israfil or something in their grave, or you can get nothing.
But that's
like,
not even good.
I'm just saying in general, like, you could high roll into something really good or something garbage. Like, I don't think that like really necessarily says that, or I don't think that necessarily like impacts the card's effect at all, unless literally everyone's playing the worst cards in the world that say you lose the game when you steal this card from them.
But what I'm saying is that a lot of cards that people are playing now are not good for you. Or like, are not good for your deck.
I mean, if you just get a Surefire Bullet, like,
is that good enough? 2-mana 4/4, play a Surefire. That's not
2-mana 4/4, deal 3 or 4 damage to an enemy.
I don't think that's that good. I
2-mana 4/4. Wait, you think
good.
the 4/4 from last set that discards or destroys
it deals 5. Number 1, it deals 5. Number 2, it's like that's because it's in the archetype and you're not paying for anything, and you're not, again, I'm not like downplaying this card. I just think that there's a lot of situations where you're going to look at the graveyard and you're just going to get whatever's just stats on the board, and then basically, like, that's what I'm saying, is that most of the time it's going to come down to, I'm just going to play this because it's stats on the board, and I don't think stats on the board is that good anymore. That's what I'm saying. I think it's a really good card in certain metas. I think it's a really good card in general. I just think it's always going to end up coming down to it being a 2-mana 4/4. You get stats on the board for 2 less, and it's just dependent on how much you care about stats on the board. Because I do think that if you get Surefire, it's not good. I don't think getting Surefire is good. I think in certain matchups, if you get Aegis and stuff, that's really good because you can keep it. There's other like tech things you can do. I just don't think I think it always ends up just coming down to, well, most of the time I'm just going to be grabbing value, and I just don't think going into set 5, value like that is good. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I mean, I think at this point, like, we obviously Shepard and I are locked in on this being really good. So yeah, S as well. Yeah. All right, we'll move on here. We have Magna Legacy, Fanfare. Banish the top half of your deck, rounded up. Deal 4 damage to each enemy leader and enemy follower on the field. If 15 or more cards were banished by this effect, deal 8 damage instead. This is a Timmy card. Does this card even ever see play? Like, it's a really funny it's a funny effect to me, but like, why would I ever play this card? Oh,
I didn't know why they printed this, because you can't play more than 40 cards in your deck, so this card doesn't work.
This card rules. Like, this card's badass, dude. Like, this is the best card they've ever made. Like, when I say like they need to make more like interesting bad cards, like, this is what I want my bad cards to be.
Every time I look at this card too, I just think this is like some kind of Protoss ship from StarCraft.
Yeah, it does look like that. It does look like that.
They were like, remember Resonance? Remember caring about how many cards on your deck? Let's do that again.
Yeah, I mean, like at eight play points, I think you just play Narita Bryan over this card every single time, unless you have a very interesting strategy around this fanfare effect.
Yeah.
All right, nothing really worth talking about more about this card, I think. Moving on here, Apostle of Usurpation, Usurpation. Oh my god, I'm
Apostle
done.
Of thief.
Yeah.
Apostle of stealing.
Yeah. All right. Evolve for 1, and then fanfare. Put the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck into their cemetery. Then, if your opponent has 10 or more cards in their cemetery, draw a card. Evolve. Their evolve form is on evolve. Select an enemy follower on the field and deal it 4 damage. Omen and Thief traded. I really like this card. I'm interested to see what you guys think about this card.
Yeah, I think it's really good. I just think it's the weakest usurpation card. I think it's really good. It's just the weakest.
I'm with Prussia. I think this card is just, it's the only thing is it's expensive. Like it's a really good effect. It's just a lot of mana.
Well, I guess it's the worst follower, I should say.
I definitely think if you're playing the Thief deck or whatever, you do play like some copies of this, right? Or do you think this is like?
I think you max out every Thief card.
I think this card is just like, because you want to make sure you're milling your opponent, but when this card has every phase of it online, this card's a built-in 3 to 4 for 1, which is pretty good. Like, I say that the dream 4 for 1 is the draw card, kill something, swing in, live, and then they have to spend a card to answer it. But
yeah,
most of the time this card's like minimum a 2 for 1 with a body.
This should be a B. But yeah, I very much agree. I actually have a question really quick too, because when I was looking at these cards for Thief, there was like 2 ways you could go about it, and I'm pretty sure they really want you to play more of a mid-range late deck, right? With like the cards, that's kind of what the deck's looking for. So I like that, the fact that this card, a lot of the times, even on its like unevolved form, it's going to cantrip into something a lot of time and help set you up for your other things.
I think in my Thief deck, I'm just trying to kill my opponent as fast as possible, to be honest. Like, I know they like have a lot of mid-rangey stuff, but I'm on the full aggro Thief.
Yeah, I've tried a couple variations. I think I played a couple with my friend. I played a couple with Skaz. The ones I played with Skaz were more just the mid-range version. I think that version is better because it's more stable. I think obviously in this game you can go 3 and 2 and still make top 8, so it doesn't matter. You can just play some RNG stuff. But I think I did try the aggro version against my friend, and it's very fun, but it's not fun when you just completely break it. You just have no plays. And I think that aggro, this is my sort of hot take or whatever, I think aggro is going to really suffer this meta. I think there's a lot of just generic removal and generic things that stop aggro. And I don't think aggro strategies are going to be the way to go. But again, you can go 3 and 2 in top 8. So.
Oh my god, we played some games, Prussia and I was on Lashina Control, and I just felt like it was so hard in a lot of those games to deal with the fact that Thief kept going up on cards. So like answering any of their cards 1 for 1 just felt horrible, and there was like never a good moment where you could actually play out the relic or the amulets. Like,
well, that's more of an issue of the card than the other side.
I'm just saying playing like the control matchup of just like into that control deck specifically, it just felt like the pressure could like never stopped.
Makes sense. All right, moving on here. Imperial Swordsman. At the start of your in phase, select an enemy follower on the field and deal it 4 damage, then deal 2 damage to its leader. Commanded trait.
So you put your Amulet of the Stars on this, and then you never swing with it, and you do 10 turns of face damage.
Jesus. This is like the type of card where like I think it would have saw play a long time ago in like the earlier sets pretty easily, but nowadays this is just like doesn't do enough. I like the effect though. I just wish it was like on something better, essentially.
At 5 mana, I really need 5 health. I really
like why is it 4?
I think there's too many things. Like, yeah, Surefire doesn't kill it, but there's just so many things that do 4 now.
Yeah.
That we've already reviewed quite a few of.
Yeah.
Between this and Forest, and there's just no reason. Like, if you're gonna play this standing, it's still gonna die. Like, at least make it 5 so that they have to commit at around 3 mana to deal with it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, moving on here. Confront adversary. Summon a Shield Guardian and a Knight token. If there's an enemy follower on the field that originally cost at least 6 play points, give +3/+3 to the Summon Shield Guardian and Knight token and recover 2 play points. Really quick, I did not include those tokens here because they've been printed in other sets, so my assumption is most people should know these cards. One of them is a 1/1 fighter, basically, and the other one is a 1/1 ward. I'm interested on your guys' thoughts on this card.
I've been thinking about this card more today when I was like kind of pre-reviewing the cards, because I didn't really think about this card too much when it came out. But I actually sort of like this card if you're playing mid-range sword. I think if you have to play it on 2, it's okay. It's not awesome. It's okay. After Leo, this card becomes really sick, actually. So 2 mana, summon 2 4/4s, one with ward, is really nice. And then obviously, if they have a 6 in play, which isn't unlikely, but it's not like all the time gonna happen in every matchup, they become 7/7s basically. And they're free, and it's 0 mana. I kind of like this card in some build of sword. I just don't know what that is, I think.
I heavily agree with that. Like when I was going through the sword cards, outside of like the new thief stuff that I really liked, they've showed off so far. I read this card, went to the next card, then I was like, wait a second, and went back to read this card again, and I was like, this card is interesting enough that I do want to try this card. I do think, like you said, usually depending on the matchup, at some point they will have to play some 6-cost card, hopefully, and you'll get really good value off of this card. This card with Leo sounds insane as well, and especially anytime you get to play this card for free, it's just going to feel really, really good. And I think it's going to be good in some type of mid-range type of deck that way. So yeah, I agree all around with everything you said, Pressure.
I think this card's bad.
Oofies.
I think this is just, I don't know. I think so point 1 is like, I'll accept that I'm wrong on this, but I want somebody to show me a good mid-range sword deck before I commit to any mid-range sword card being good, because it's been 3 sets of people playing mid-range sword when they really have no right to. And let's see if that continues. Like, is that going to be a deck? And then the other thing is, this guy is just so bad on the main mode. Like, you pretty much are only playing this for the second mode, right? Like, a 1/1 ward and a 1/1 for 2, just nothing to do with what I want to be doing. And I also think every sword card is good when you have Leo in play. So I'm off this card. Maybe a D, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. It's definitely true that every sword card is good when Leo's in play, and I do criticize when people say it. I said that first. I think I should have swapped what I said. Like, I think obviously the reason you play this card is the second effect, and I think the second effect is like insane.
I'm gonna go with a hot take. I think this card's probably a D, but I'm gonna go F, so that if it turns out to actually be really bad, I can come back later and say I tried to warn you.
I'm giving it a C. I like this card. I do want to like mess around with this card in some kind of mid-rangey, maybe even control-y build. And like you said, the second part is what I'm most excited for this card. And the worst case scenario is on turn 2. This is like the best 2-drop I have. All right, whatever.
All right, I'm gonna stealthily change this to a D, because I thought one of you guys was gonna be a D on this. All right.
No. I think that so the thief build that I have right now, there's a card that I would consider like swapping this card for that card, like just 3 for 3. And that's kind of why I'm giving it a B. I just think this card is really good into certain metas, and I think I don't want to ride my dinosaur in again, but there was a very similar card in digital that was extremely strong. That was similar to this card, but
yeah, show me the 6-cost cards that show up every game, and then I'll be more into this. That's not sarcastic. That's legitimate. Like, that's what would get me invested in this card, is if in general you could expect to see in every single game a 6-cost card.
Yeah. All right. Moving on here. Disciple of Usurpation, Storm, Strike, put the top card of your opponent's deck into their cemetery. Then, if your opponent has 10 or more cards in their cemetery, give this Slaughter +2 attack. This card's insane.
Card's cracked.
Yeah.
This card's absolutely busted. Makes Juliet look embarrassed.
Busted.
All right, I'm just speaking out. This makes Juliet look like shit.
true. I just this works very well in the archetype and everything. It's like worst case scenario, it's a 3 attack. It's almost like a novice trooper, but it like dies to like snipe, I guess. But like a lot of the times, if you're playing in the archetype, you're going to be swinging in for 5, and that's like an actual threat your opponent has to consider every time they're playing into you. If you're playing Thief Sword,
yeah. This is like what makes the aggro Thief build so good. I think this is what makes it come together.
You hit turn. Your opponent hits turn 6, and you're like, cool. I don't have any wards. I'm about to eat 10 to the face. Like,
yeah, your novice trooper does 5. I think this is part of why the meta has to be so controlling, because if you're any kind of mid range or other deck where you don't have a quick answer to specifically like this card, it just puts you at such a disadvantage. Like I think it's among many factors what pushes this to be more of a controlling meta game.
I think my take on all these Thief cards is you guys are very overestimating how fast you get to 10. I think this is not going to come down as a 5-2, except outside of extreme circumstances where you're winning already, except by like turn maybe 6. And yeah, by turn 6, if you drop 2 of these, that's awesome. But it's you have to be hitting. That's why I don't like the aggro version on paper and in practice actually too, because I've played it a lot. Is that you have to see every piece. You have to see the 1-drop into Octrus, into this, into probably the Disciple or whatever his name is, the 4-drop one. And then you get to 10. Like,
I mean, maybe. I mean, you've played it more than me. I just think the floor being Novice Trooper.
But it's not Novice Trooper. It's Novice Trooper that dies to the Angelic Snipe. I think there's a huge difference between 2 and 3.
I mean, how many snipes do you think people are going to be playing this set?
I think a lot next set.
You think this is going to be a meta game of a lot of control mirrors, and then those control decks are also playing snipe? That doesn't sound
right. But I don't think you need to be a control deck to be playing snipe. Like, look at the list in Japan.
Yeah, but you said you think this is going to be mostly a control meta game, right?
I think mid-range to control, yeah. I think I guess what I said was it's going to be less aggro. I don't think aggro.
I guess the more snipes people play, the worse this card gets for sure. But also in specifically this deck, if you're playing the aggro version, they're going to want to run those out early as well. They only have so many snipes in their deck. And if they spend any other card, this is effectively a novice trooper with upside.
All right, Pressure. What's your rating? Let's see it. B?
I think
Whoa.
B. All right.
I think it's like Hearthstone. At some point, they like took out charge for a while because they realized all the cards that could go face immediately were busted, no matter how like badly they were costed. I don't think Shadowverse is that extreme, but I do think it's pretty close. Where like most of the cards that say Storm are pretty good.
Yeah, I think Storm is like one of the best keywords in the game, but
I think it's the best keyword.
Aura's pretty annoying, but
I think Storm's better than Aura.
It probably is, yeah.
Because Aura doesn't kill them is the problem.
All right, moving on to here. Fervent Machine Soldier. Fanfare. Discard a commander card, search your deck for a commander card, and put it into your hand. 3-drop, 3/4. So when I first read this card, I was like, I think this card's pretty interesting, but it probably sucks. It probably really depends. Like, are there like maybe a turn 4, turn 5 commander you always want to see every game, and like you can curve into that with this? That's kind of interesting. Outside of that, it's just like I kind of wish this card was good, but I feel like it's not at all. What do you?
I just don't understand why you have to discard a commander and it's an officer. Like, you could probably make some sort of all commander deck, and then this is fine. But then you have to be playing this, which is an officer. I just don't understand why it's discard a commander card and then search for another commander card. If it was discard a card and search for a commander card, it still would be bad because you just probably rather gem staff because you're going. I mean, it's. I don't know. This card confuses me.
Yeah, on the face of it, I saw this card and I was like, okay, let me look at what commander cards you would want to get. Like, are there any muskets? But then before I'd even started that process, I was like, wait a minute. If there's a must-get commander card, how many better ways than this can we search it out? And the answer is at least 3.
Yeah.
And I think this is the worst of those, of the searchers.
And another thing is sort of they've cut down like a lot of the cards that were commanders from digital that aren't commanders anymore. So like there's a lot less commanders in the game than there really should be.
Yeah. If you ever have this in your hand and you can't activate its effect, it's like also if you have 2 of them,
That's what
you can't discard the other one. Yeah.
That's what I was saying is
So,
why isn't
yeah.
it discard? And like if you make a full commander deck, you have to put this in, and it's like no.
Yeah. Like when I read this card, I wanted it to be good, but like very quickly, it was just like this card sucks. All right, moving on here. Machine Artisan Gino. Evolve for 1, and then whenever you play an amulet, select a follower on your field and give it +1 health. Or yeah, and then the evolved form, whenever you play an amulet, same thing, select a follower on the field, give it +1 health, and then on evolve, search your deck for an amulet, reveal it, and add it to your hand. This would have been cool to have in set 1.
The Arthurian light. Whoa! I mean, this is. I don't know. I don't understand.
What amulets are there even worthwhile?
I think it's Arthurian light, and that's it. Right?
It's really funny.
I mean, there's banner if we really hate ourselves, but yeah, go ahead.
I understand why they had to put Gino in physical. It's just so funny that this is what they did with him.
What did he even fucking do in digital? I don't even remember that card.
The original Gino? He's a portal craft
What
card.
did he do?
I don't remember. Something with resonance.
This card sucks. Holy
this
shit.
card's really.
Why do you remember this card? Why do you remember this card?
Because I'm a boomer. That's why. I think the thing with this card
that's crazy.
Is that it's like a beautiful card. You know, like I don't want to spend too much time, but I just want to say it's like art to me. Like this is like the room of card design, because it not only cares about amulets in Sword. What your payoff for getting the amulets is health in Sword. It's just like I can't imagine a more beautiful attempt. The only thing that would have been better is if it was an officer. Unfortunately, it's a commander.
This is what you discarded with that last card. Perfect.
Oh my god. You discard your Gino to go get a good card.
No, you get your second copy of Gino.
I'm just so confused why you remember this terrible card from digital.
Oh, man. All right, I think we kind of talked about this enough. We'll move on to a more relevant card here. Servant Usurpation. During your turn, whenever a card is put from your opponent's deck into their cemetery, give this follower +1 attack, and then fanfare put the top card of your opponent's deck into their cemetery. So it's a goblin that can potentially go up and attack. Card's really good.
Yeah, this is the card. I think this is the card that people see and go, here we go, aggro, thief aggro, or usurpation aggro. But you just have to see every single piece perfectly, and they have to not be playing any removal cards for it to be that good. I think this card is good. It's goblin that does that you know, progresses your quest. I just think that thinking about it living is not, I would say, smart.
Yeah, the way you view this card is goblin is busted, and this is a goblin with upside that not only is upside from the other cards you play, it like both enables all the cards after it, and all the cards after it give it upside if it somehow lives. It's just a great double-sided like I don't know, it's just good. This card is good, and honestly, if there wasn't 10 million goblins you could already choose from, it'd be like, okay, cool, here's our 12th goblin and all the other sword decks too. And in fact, if you really want to get some people, you can cut your what's it called? The other 2/2, the one that with no text. Run this instead if you're not playing Thief in your sword deck. And then when you play it on turn 1, your opponent's gonna think you're on Thief. You get a little information, you know. They're playing the Snowlands and Magic.
Oh my god, I hate you.
Tell me, imagine your opponent plays this on turn 1, and then they're just Hero Sword after that.
And then this is like, oh, thank you. Thank you for progressing my Deco charge. Thank you. Really appreciate that. I do think that is something that is important to touch on, is the fact that there are decks that want to have a high graveyard. Like, this is the Necrocharge Abyss or Abyss.
It's sad. You're like, oh really no.
And also, it's also because all the things that you can steal are not good, because Israfil can't evolve. Azazel can't evolve. I guess you could play a 5/5 that. No, what would it be? It would be maybe a 4. Actually, how would that interaction work? Because it goes to 4 and then does it go to 2, or would it just go to stay at 4? Anyway, but like, there's not a lot of stuff you can steal in the deck that's super relevant. So,
all right, moving on here. Captain Mato, evolve for 1, fanfare, select an enemy leader and deal it 4 damage. On evolve, select an enemy follower on the field and destroy it. Commander. All right. Can we just give this an F and move forward? Like,
this is TMM, too much mana.
Yep.
There's a cost that this stat line with this effect can be played at, and this is not that cost.
All right, moving on. Kinetic Warrior? Kinetic Warrior. Okay, yeah, that's what we're going with. Fanfare. Select a token follower on your field and give it +2/+2, an Officer Supreme trait. When I read this card originally when building these slides, I was like, that is such an interesting effect for Sword. I kind of like the idea of the effect, but I think in playing this card, 4-drop 4/4, that it pumps something for 2/2, I don't know if that's even relatively good enough at all, if even. So, like, I want this card to be good because I want, like, fun token decks to have, like, cool things. But in theory, this card is probably garbage every single time.
I just don't understand why they understated it. I just don't understand that.
It's not only, it's understated, and also it's like the way token decks work is if you're going to only buff one token, tokens are generally small. So give it a big buff. Give it +3/+3. If you're going to give it a small buff, at least let it spread over multiple bodies, But turning your 1/1 into a 3/3 at this point in the metagame, it's just not enough for a card to, like, want to make you build around in any way.
Yeah, if this was like kind of like, I forgot what like the shorthand it is in MTG called, but like the cards, it's like all mere folks get +1/+1. It, like, the static effect like that. I would have loved to see it like on a body.
Yeah, like a Lord.
Yeah, a Lord. There we go. Like a Lord where it's just all tokens get +2/+2. Like, as long as it's on the board. Yeah,
and make it a static effect that it applies to the board. That's fine.
Yeah, that would have been way more interesting and cool. All right, moving on here. Usurping Spine Blade. Quick, select an enemy follower on the field and deal it 3 damage. Put the top card of your opponent's deck into their cemetery. Then if your opponent has 10 or more cards in their cemetery, deal it an additional 2 damage. I read this card and I was in love with this card. What are you guys' thoughts?
This is the second best usurping card.
Yeah.
There's a reason why this card only mills 1, and it's because if it milled 2, it would be absolutely bust. It would be the best card. No, it's just really good. I think it does so much. It goes up on mana value, right? Because you trade with things that cost more than it. You still achieve your game plan. You can play it early. You can play it late. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, one other thing too is from playing so much Sword, getting to deal 5 damage to something sometimes requires a lot of work, or you're going to pay more than 2 every time. And this card lets you stay on game plan and still deal that 5 damage most of the time when you start playing this out and need to remove like 5 health followers from the board. At that point, they should be pretty close to 10 in cemetery at that point. I really, really like this card.
Yeah, I think it's extremely strong.
Next card here in the Last of Sword, Veritia? All right, whatever. All right, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a thief card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. If you revealed an Octress, Omen of Usurpation, return this card to your hand. So when I read this card, I was like, oh, they really want you to play like this mid-range package with the thief stuff, or like some kind of control thing going on. I like this card. I feel like depending on what type of deck you're going for, if you're going for an aggro deck, you probably never want to play this card. But if you're playing for more of a mid-range to late game control type of game plan, this card is probably really, really good value as the game goes on, and it helps you find one of the key pieces, Octress, which is obnoxious.
This card's so funny because the way it reads is top check 4. If you hit the best card in your deck, draw another one of this card. Like, draw another Avarita. It's so funny.
I think this card. So when I was playing against you guys, I had this card in my deck. I think that I cut it. I don't think this card is very good. I think that you're doing something that you don't want to do in Sword, where you're spending mana that doesn't affect the field at all, and like, you're pretty unlikely to not hit. So I'm not even going to talk about like not hitting, but it's only good if you hit Octress. And even then, you still just get another 1 mana thing back in your hand that doesn't affect the field. I just don't like cards like that, especially in Sword. And it was sick because I got one game where I hit Octress twice. It's like, wow, I have a huge hand now. But I realize that that's the only reason it was good. If you miss Octrus and you hit any other thief, it just is terrible. It's just a terrible card. I don't think this card is very good.
Yeah, I could see that. I think for me, it's on the like edge of playability where I can see like some decks run one of this card that are in the more mid-rangey, like where they want the selection. I don't love if you're playing any kind of aggro variant playing this card because you just want to be spending every card and every single play point on killing your opponent.
Yeah, that's why I kind of like when I read this card, I'm like, this card, if you're playing this card, they're really pushing you to play the mid-range to late game game plan, and you're trying to just outvalue your opponent so much with these types of cards that like they just run out of resources before you do. That's how I felt when I read the card.
There's also only 15 other cards that you could put in the deck that like are traded. I thought that this couldn't get itself, but it doesn't say that, so I don't know. But like it's not like an amazing chance in 4. Like obviously you're gonna hit it most of the time, but like you're not gonna get like you're not gonna get a array of cards to choose from. Like you might get 1 or 2, and you're choosing between Servant on turn 7 or the Storm guy. Is there really a choice? So I don't know. I think it's a D.
All right. Well, craft hype, guys. I think this is one of the crafts that I'm just like really up there on. I really want to play this at some point, and a lot of it. Mostly for the thief.
Excited. Yeah, I think I'm excited for the deck, but I think that like I just don't think it's that really strong of a deck if you know how to play against it. So, and I feel like people learn pretty fast. And so I'm not really excited to play it, but it is one of the 2 decks that I probably will end up playing this. So I'll say a B.
Prussia said it here first. If you lose to this deck, it was a skill issue.
I mean, I think more of a skill issue before you sit down, but yeah.
I do think, I'm excited for this. I think this is surprisingly, I might play this deck this set depending on how I feel about Rune or Haven. The only thing that like I think really it's like there's a slight false promise where you read Octrus and you're like, oh cool, is this gonna be like a more skill testing aggro deck to play? And then you read all the other cards and you're like, oh no, they're just aggro cards. But that said, I do think this deck is going to have a lot of play to it. It's going to be fun. And I think the most enjoyable thing for me is going to be finding the right build of like, how do I want to approach this?
Yeah, for sure.
Just what I enjoy. So I'm excited.
All right. As always, guys, here's some of our Twitter, X, or whatever you want to follow it. You want to follow Brim1, Kit, Prussia, Shepard here. These are our handles. Go ahead and give us a follow on there. Other than that, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. Our next set here will be Rune, I think, right? So, yeah, see you guys tomorrow for our Rune review. Later, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Farewell, friends.